Hello, Internet. Gino, aka that Pinguino Grieco, here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Today we're going to be talking about Dota 2, playing while female, the experience of playing a pickup video game, all sorts of cool stuff. You're gonna love it. I'm also, as always, joined by Kingdom Hearts apologist, Billy, the Grindfather Rothert.
God damn it.
Oh, that's
What?
exactly.
Oh my god. Okay, I defended Kingdom Hearts until there was no ground left for me to retreat to, and I feel like I did the Kingdom Hearts fans justice.
You tried very hard. In your own words, I don't believe what I'm saying anymore. We're also joined by PhD, hopefully soon-to-be candidate, Peter. Kyrie should have picked me, Busby.
I think things would have gone a lot smoother if she had. There'd be no Keyblades. We would just have a small house in the country. It would have been wonderful.
She'd still have her heart. And
That's
it wouldn't
it.
be like a weird clone of her. Kingdom Hearts.
The only keys would be to our beautiful hutch full of our homemade jams.
And joining us for this special occasion is Elise Hyasiance Stevenson, the writer of a very awesome article on playing Dota like a girl, and she's the person who inspired this episode. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Most people just call me Haya, so I'm okay with that. And when we get into things, it's not about me playing like a girl. I do that all the time. It's about you playing like a girl.
True.
Yep. And so before we start the Dota stuff, we actually got a response.
What?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Remember, if you like anything, if you want to add to the conversation that we are having on the podcast, you can hit me up at thatpinguino@gmail.com or on Twitter @thatpinguino. Or I guess this person did it on giantbomb.com. Again, thatpinguino there as well. And the comment was on our Kingdom Hearts episode. Slag says, "You know, this episode made me realize that the absolute best way to enjoy Kingdom Hearts, and perhaps the only way, is to not think about it at all. Because the more you do, the worse it gets. You guys were very understandably bothered by so much of the stuff I never noticed. I don't think I can unsee what you were talking about now that you've opened my eyes to it, like Sora being able to take down Hercules. Maybe that was the true message of Chain of Memories. Oh god, this is all so dumb and nonsensical. Maybe we'd all be better off forgetting it. I liked Kingdom Hearts 1. I kind of wish I hadn't listened to this now. Good show."
Yes, mission accomplished.
So way to go, everyone. I don't know that we have a response to that.
Oh.
I couldn't save him. I tried.
You can't unsee it. When a 13-year-old beats Hercules in a one-on-one fight, you can't explain that away.
When you know, you know.
So thank you for the comments. As always, thatpinguino@gmail.com or @thatpinguino if you want to send comments, critiques, all good. Add to the conversation, whatever. Okay, so now moving on to Dota Dose.
If you thought Kingdom Hearts was a shit show,
It's
welcome to Dota.
Was there a Dota 1? I've never seen
There
Yeah.
was a Dota 1. So
Yeah.
let's just explain what the hell we're even talking about here.
Okay, yes.
Dota is a multiplayer game. The genre is classified as a MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena.
It's like a single-player RTS that you play in a team of 5 against another
sort
team
of like a
5.
single-player RTS. That's not a bad way to put it. And Dota, the original Dota, started off as a mod of Warcraft 3. And later, it became pretty popular. Other games sort of copied the model, like League of Legends and Heroes of New Earth. Not straight up copied, but they took from it and sort of improvised new stuff. So there's a couple of games now. More recently, a game like Heroes of the Storm falls under the MOBA category. It's pretty fun. That's the Blizzard version. And recently, I should say maybe 2-3 years ago, Dota 2 came onto the scene. It has since left beta, been pretty successful. It is now one of the most financially successful professional video game scenes in existence. It has since, I think, toppled the seasonal net worth of games like StarCraft 2 or even StarCraft
wow.
Brood War back when it was playing, and CS:GO.
Back when it
So-
had 2 TV channels in South Korea.
Yeah.
No, I've-
$18 million prize pool for the last international. No big deal.
No
I have a
big deal.
question. I
Go
bet
ahead.
a lot of our listeners have a similar question, so let me just get this out of the way before
Okay.
we go further. Is DOTA an acronym?
Yes,
that
it
just-
Yes.
stands for Defense of the Ancients.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was originally a mod of Warcraft 3, and so they used kind of like a tree thing to stand for each of the bases,
Yeah.
and that is the ancient that you are defending.
You're defending it. Okay.
Yes, and if
Now
Or
I know-
killing.
you fail to defend it.
Yeah, I feel like that was the missing part of my game, was not knowing that acronym. It's probably why I had so much trouble.
In
Okay.
essence, this is a tug of war kind of game where you and your teammates will gain control over an arena to the point where you can either dominate your teammates or destroy their base.
You mean dominate your enemies.
Sorry, yeah, dominate your enemies.
Sometimes you also have
Sometimes
to
you
dominate
dominate
your
your
teammates.
teammates.
That's,
Just dominate
that's just
everything.
a Freudian slip. That's all that is.
It's also considered a strategy game just because
True.
there's so many little intricacies.
hmm
But yeah,
It has over 100 characters. It's super duper deep. So, Haya, do you want to explain our procedure, how we approach this experiment?
so the play like a girl experiment.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
So-
and your article.
I could do all of that. So sort of the tail end of when Gamergate was happening, and there was a lot of talk about misogyny in gaming. I was playing for a team for visibly gaming, and they wanted me to sort of do a blog post for their website, and I said, well, I don't know what to write about, and they said, well, write about what you know, and I said, well, I know about misogyny in gaming, but I said,
Okay.
I didn't want to write anything from the perspective of the female playing these games because, first of all, anybody who cares has already heard it. It's the same perspective that was tackled in the news. And anybody who really should be hearing it really doesn't give a shit, So I wanted to do something that was more lighthearted, a lot more fun. And sort of, I had this idea of, wouldn't it be fun if my guy friends knew what it was like to play as a girl, like really knew what it was like. And so an idea was sort of born that I would have my guy friends, and it started with just my guy friends who were tortured. But essentially they had to change their in-game profiles so it hid a lot of their personal information, change their names to either gender neutral or female names. I think Siraction Slacks, we can get to that. I think for a while his name was Firecrotch Bitch. I don't think that was very gender neutral. And change their profile pictures and use a voice modulator so that they would sound like women. And we did it. It was primarily done with Dota 2, but 11 different games were actually played as women for the sort of experiment. There was nothing really scientifically quantifiable, but we did do an actual experiment with it with surveys and things and figured out some stats of different things. But
At
we
minimum,
did
it counts as a study. Like it is a
Yeah.
study of
Mhm.
a specific dynamic.
yeah.
At worst, it meets the qualifications for like a case study.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we did like No More Room in Hell, Call of Duty, CS:GO. Some people did it. It was different platforms, not just PC. I had some friends do it on Xbox, some different things. And it was amazing. And it sort of snowballed. Once people started doing it, some other people got wind of it. Siraction Slacks, who is a fairly famous personality within the Dota 2 community, actually did it on his stream.
Oh, wow.
He streamed straight for 10 hours and did it. It was insane. And it got a lot of sort of negative feedback for him. And,
Weird.
But it was,
Who would've
I
thought?
mean, I don't know if you know Siraction Slacks or I've seen any
Yeah, I
of his videos.
watched a stream.
Yeah, so he tends to go to the nth degree with everything, and he's very, I don't know, how would you describe Slacks?
A strong character.
Oh, very
Yeah,
Carrot Top.
precise, very astute.
right. So the first game he logs in. Also, one of the things that I don't know if you guys experienced with the voice modulator is if your voice is already naturally a little bit higher, even as a male, it doesn't mod as well
Yeah, it
as
makes
if
you
your
sound
voice
like a
is.
cartoon character.
Yeah, so it mods a lot better if your voice is lower. So his voice is already high, and he has such a noticeable um, personality that the first game he logged into, somebody's like, "You sound like Slacks," and he's like, "God damn it!" Um, so, but what did come of it is I got a lot more people that watched the stream to participate, and we ended up. I can't remember the exact numbers. I will. It was I can't remember how many hours right now. I've got it though somewhere.
How many hours people played?
150 hours
Wow.
for the study. So, yeah, over 150 hours of gaming as female was played. I didn't include what Slacks did in
so
those
his
hours.
10 hours is not.
Yeah, it was a total write-off. It was terrible, but it was really cool.
We call that like shit, I'm losing it now.
He planted a seed, but he was
It-
not.
Outlier.
data.
I
It's
believe-
a statistical outlier.
The quote from my article is his contribution to the project was much larger than his results would have provided. So, which is very true. And then a lot of people from Join Dota were parts of it. Stats people from Standard Deviants.
Oh, wow.
I
Cool.
talked to Pyrian Flax about it.
Oh, wow.
He said he would do. He didn't have time to do the 10 hours, and he said he'd make a video about it and give me a shout out and do the questionnaire. But I think other things came up, and he never actually did it. But I did actually get to talk to Pyrian Flax, which was kind of
Cool.
cool.
He is a Dota personality.
Ah,
Oh yeah,
okay.
and
There's so many.
I did talk to Reeves about it at one point too. He didn't, end up doing anything with it, but it was kind of one of those things where all of a sudden I was even just talking to these people who are huge members of this community. And I mean, I love Dota. I've played on a few sort of amateur and semi-pro teams, and you should have seen me. I got the direct message on Twitter from Pyrian Flax when I was at work, and I'm a nurse. So I was at work, and I'm like sitting in the nursing station, and I get this, direct message from Pyrian Flax, and I dropped my phone. I was like jumping around the nursing station. I'm a total Dota geek. Like,
Yeah, Pete, to frame this for you.
I was gonna say, let's put it in context.
yeah.
So, the announcer who talks like your towers are under
Yeah.
attack. That you can change that announcer with a voice pack from Pyrian Flax. He is an announcer pack.
So it'd be like meeting like Marv Albert.
It'd be like having Charles Barkley, talk to you for like half a second.
All right, that'd be pretty awesome.
It was
I'll
pretty
give that one.
cool.
Now I
Or
get it.
maintain a conversation with you.
And actually, it's funny you brought up the announcer pack because I run the Pyrian Flax announcer pack when I play, and
It's a good pack.
I told him I was going to sell it on the marketplace if he didn't help me out. So maybe it was
So
like,
a different
you're dead to
perspective
me.
is, for the recent international, it's it's estimated that there were enough viewers. I might get this number a little bit wrong, but it's going to be close. There was enough viewers to fill the MetLife Stadium
I was there.
like 8 or 10 times.
At MetLife or at the
I've been to
International?
MetLife.
All right.
Well,
That's a big stadium.
what I mean to say is the amount of people that were watching the international. If you took all the people that were viewing it on stream or in Dota or whatever, it would fill the MetLife Stadium something like 8 or 10 times.
That's pretty impressive.
To put it into perspective from like an esports point of view, the international competition last year was on ESPN too.
Hmm.
There you go.
I can't think of
That's a
any
channel
other
I know.
time.
Yeah, see?
I can't
Yeah.
think of any other time that esports has had coverage in North America since maybe like StarCraft, when like fucking Idra was like the #1 American StarCraft player back in like 2002 or some shit.
Yeah, I feel like the last time like not just esportsy sort of video game sports, but also like games like Magic the Gathering and stuff, the last time that kind of stuff was covered on ESPN was in a very different place. It didn't have access to a lot of the major sports that they now run. So to see Dota 2 now outperforming, like ESPN 2 might be showing NASCAR or might be showing a sport that has major appeal, and Dota 2 actually has more in some cases. So it's like, really cool to see.
Now they have all that Disney money rolling in, and that's what they choose to show.
All the dollars.
All the dollars.
Deadmau5 was there.
Deadmau5, yeah, performed.
I have the Deadmau5 music pack.
That was really awkward.
Yeah, it was so awkward. Not that anybody, like any of the fans, thought that his performance it was like all of this hype, and then all of a sudden Deadmau5, and then nothing. It was. I mean, I heard he was better at the after party, but
if
they basically had Dendy on the track, then it would have been a party.
Pete, let me put it to you this way. It'd be like someone was interviewing Richard Sherman after winning the Super Bowl, and then they cut him off and said, "And now, the Black Eyed Peas."
It would be exactly like that, actually.
And then the Black Eyed Peas play a half-hour concert. So,
do they have a half hour of music?
It was a half hour of Deadmau5, pretty
much.
There was like 30 or 40 music.
Yeah, the Black Eyed Peas have enough. They have about 10 minutes you want to hear, like Deadmau5.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That was uncalled for. He's fine.
Anyway.
Yes.
It's the most popular game on Steam. It's kind of a big deal.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's free. It's very deep.
It's very deep. It's the deepest. It's Mariana Trench deep.
It is. Yeah. You know what? I feel like I maybe, and having played, like I said, in those sort of competitive environments, I feel like I have a fairly good handle on the game, but I don't feel like I know the ins and outs of the like all of these little idiosyncrasies. I have almost 5,000 hours played on Dota.
I've got close to 2, and I know
2 hours.
Shit. No, 2,000. I've definitely played over 1,000. I've probably 1,500 games. And I know that I still don't know shit about this game. And I'm just actively bad.
I have 4,779.8 hours on record for Dota 2.
Damn. So, what did you find in your gigantic sample size for the study?
My gigantic sample size that wasn't very gigantic. Well, a few things happened. There was
150 hours is a lot of hours.
Yeah, but that's like.
But in Dota hours, it's
12 people. 13 people, right?
That's as many hours as I have playing Dota, I think.
Yeah. So, a few things happened. I mean, there were some isolated incidents. One of the guys who I met through this project, who's kind of become a friend of mine, his name's DKC1011. He's from Ireland. And when he uses the voice mod, he sounds like a very pretty Irish lady. Quite like Luna in the game, actually almost identical to Luna in the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't actually Dota. He was playing in No More Room in Hell. Like, somebody was actually physically masturbating to the sound of his voice. Like, he could hear the guy on the other end. That was kind of like.
Oh, my God.
And he said, I was also objectified a good bit and was insulted brutally. But I mean, that kind of thing happens too, I guess. And there were people who got rape threats. There were people who, like for instance, one of the guys, his name's Fridgemaster. He's a statsman for Standard Deviants and works with Dota TV. And he got rape threats from someone who claimed to know where he was based on his IP address. And it got really scary because he actually mentioned the city that he was living in. And he said, like, I'm not a real computer expert, but I don't think it's possible to do straight from the game client. So he was afraid that he sort of missed something. And he did. Like, his his hometown was still on his profile page, but he was really freaked out. Like, he messaged me freaking out. I'm like, well, welcome to my world. If you look at my Steam profile, like, there are marriage proposals on my Steam profile, like, constantly.
Or entire walls of like little symbol heart shaped
Yeah,
like
there's
banners.
a lot of those. Yeah, a lot of those too. Do you cosplay? Do you role play? Do you I'm like, what?
Do you Skype on the weekends for money? Can you be who I want you to be on the weekends?
This sounds like
That's
really
when my wife is away.
yeah.
It does
Suddenly
get
got cold in here. I felt a chill.
It's freaky sometimes. You know, one of the things we tracked is how many times, you know, after a game do the people that you play with immediately add you to your friends list? Any game.
So in my 10 hours, I personally did not get that extreme of a level of misogyny
Friend-
directed at me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I didn't get any friend requests that I noticed.
Okay.
But I don't usually get them. A lot of the thing I noticed was, for me, a lot of my games were played with at least 1 to 2 people who were clearly not English speakers or English native speakers. And so whenever that happened, you know, they're not talking anyway. And so they kind of can't understand what I'm saying in the first place necessarily, because I don't type. Usually I'm just using my voice. And so that eliminated like 1 or 2 sources of harassment, or at least mitigated it a little bit more, and made it less overt. The worst I got was someone, me and Billy were both in a game together, and someone went, "Oh wow, there's 2 girls in this game? What?" And we're like, "Yeah, what of it?" And he was like, "You sound hot." And I'm like, and Billy just said like, "Can we focus on winning the game?" And the guy was like, "I was just trying to be nice." And
yeah, because that's really nice.
I was like, this is one, in the entirety of my life, no one has ever walked up to me just and said, "You're hot," just out of nowhere for no reason.
That doesn't happen to you, Gino?
No, weirdly enough.
Are
I
you
try
tripping
so
out?
hard.
It's like I can barely leave my house without.
Yeah, so that happened, and I had one person in it. So Dota, some people, you know, when you get that person who at the beginning of the game their mic is on and you know that they're going to be a talker and be a shit talker? I got that person, and they were like, "Oh, you're a girl, ha 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 ha."
Yeah.
And then we laid together, and he was really bad.
So most of them, about 95% of the hours, of the guys were asked for their personal information. So real name, where they live, phone number, pictures, mostly asked for nudes, social media links. Over 80% of all the games that were played, the men received friend invites immediately after.
Oh, wow.
In that 150 hours, 10 marriage proposals happened.
Wow.
And I've had it happen where I've gotten a marriage proposal, and when I turn them down, and usually I'm not very polite about it. I'm like, if we win, I'll think about it. But
Like, carry this game right. Like, win your lane, and then we'll talk.
yeah, and somebody's like, "Yeah, I fucked your mom." I'm like, "My mom likes winners, so shut up and play the fucking game." That's me in a game. So, yeah. So I don't know.
So Pete, what were your stats like in game? Like, how I'm really curious personally to know what your experience was with this experiment, because not only were you playing like a girl, this was your first look at Dota.
Yes, it was. When you say
I'm just like dying to know what you discovered.
Could I ask just one question about the procedure before? Just a quick question. Were people solo queuing for all of this?
For this, yeah, they had to solo queue.
Okay.
Yeah, that was part of the guidelines for the experiment. They had to solo queue. They couldn't act like they couldn't knowingly act more feminine or try to be like, look at, oh, you must love me. Like, none of that crap.
Mm-hmm.
So they just had to play as they normally would, with the only differences being that they're, you know, they were being perceived as a female as opposed to perceived as a male. Okay. And yeah, I did that on purpose. And I mean, granted, some of these guys were pretty volatile people to begin with, so they had interesting results. But yeah, I want to hear how it went from a brand new Dota perspective.
Yeah,
Sure.
go for it.
Yeah. So when you say stats, you mean my experience, because I don't know where to find my actual gameplay stats.
No, like
No.
you know,
They're
how many
all
people
zeros and
how many people said shit to you? How many people like friended you? How many people harassed you or whatever?
All right. Well, the very first game I played, there wasn't too much harassment in game, but afterwards, some very harsh words were exchanged. Most of them were to the effect of, "You should never play again. Uninstall this immediately."
Is that because you were bad or because they thought you were a girl, though?
I'm willing to bet both, and that's sort of the question I was going to bring up, right? And this is something, like, just because I'm a literary person, I've been looking at the Hugo Awards. You know, if you don't know, they're the preeminent awards in science fiction writing, right? And there's been a large backlash against women and authors of color sort of coming into the Hugo Awards, right? It seems like they're getting, people suspect they might be getting preferential treatment.
Treatment to
But-
broaden the horizons.
Right. But the argument they always make is, no, we're not concerned about women, authors of color. This isn't sort of, let's protect the old vanguard. It's a question of talent or skill, let's say. They're making the argument that these stories are inherently worse. And I wonder if that's sort of a strategy people make with this sort of argument, right? Like, no, it's not a question of the gamer being female or misogyny. They just try to reestablish it as a question of skill, right? To sort of protect their own shitty ideals, right? So I wonder if that was attacked. I think, granted, admittedly, I'm terrible, so that probably wasn't the best case study for that. But it seemed like rhetorically, that's a strategy I could see people employing in a case like this.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning, since this is your first exposure to the Dota community, being bad in game is almost always met with someone telling you to uninstall the game and that you're terrible.
I would never.
GG
I would
uninstall,
never
please.
I have no interest in returning to Dota after this, but if I had, I probably wouldn't have after this experience.
And yeah, that was one of my main questions for you. If this was your real, I mean, it is your real first experience, would you ever play again?
No.
No. Okay. So that, just something to keep in mind, like, learning Dota's hard.
And they're not making it any easier.
They're not making it any easier. If you're in a game with someone who's not especially good, just be nice to them. Understand that they might not know. They're not doing it on purpose 90% of the time. 10% of the time.
Let's just be real. Like, people don't want to just lose and waste an hour of their time. If someone has a bad lane or a bad game and they feed, like, they are not trying to make your life miserable for the next 45 minutes and their life miserable. I mean, some people have bad games. Some people have bad lanes.
I mean, there are also people who are there intentionally to screw up your hour.
I had someone who played Wisp and just teleported people into the opposing fountain.
Yeah, see, that guy. That guy.
Happens, you know, and that's part of Dota.
Yeah.
And you just have to accept that.
I turned down a marriage proposal once, and the guy kept taking my stuff off of the courier and hiding it around the map.
Wow.
It was great. I had to watch the replay to find out where everything ended up because I was like, I swear I bought my brown boots already. Where are my brown boots? And they were
in a tree.
Yeah, they were in a tree.
But hi, that's sort of, sorry to interrupt. That's sort of rhetorical strategy I talked about, right? Do you see people trying to frame it like that fairly often?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not that we resent women gamers. It's just that they're inherently or through lack of practice.
They're just bad at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're just bad. Like, over 30% of those games that those guys played had game losses predicted before the match even started just because there was a girl on the team, because girls are inherently bad at video games.
So then it's not
That's not true. Yeah. But it is.
Clearly it is. That's just
and it's funny because what's happened to a lot of the female gaming community because of this sort of reaction is that they just don't talk on mic. They, use gender neutral names. I was on a semi-pro team and it was an all-female team and we were sponsored. And our biggest struggle when we were forming our team and getting up to a competitive level, our biggest struggle was communication because we were all afraid to talk. And it took a while. It was like, we're in a safe place. It was like group sessions. You're in a safe place. It's okay. You can even leave on open mic here. Like it was, and that was the biggest thing we had to get over, was because, I don't give a shit generally, but I mean, when you have so many bad experiences, you get used to just not saying anything.
There are
And-
people for whom speaking is a risk.
Yes.
You risk your game experience and sometimes your just like general happiness or well-being by simply voicing yourself.
Yep.
Just be
And-
like, hey guys, good game.
Yeah, imagine trying to play a game of pickup basketball where telling someone that there's a pick coming will end up with you getting a marriage proposal and then stalked online for the next day.
That
or two.
analogy is so real.
Right?
I got it. I was on board.
Like, good how are you? What's your schedule look like, for the rest of your life?
Yeah, like imagine going to play a game of softball at an intramural league and someone just like, I like the way you said pitch. Want to live with me? Like that just doesn't happen.
And it's not to sort of,
And it's normal.
yeah, and not to overlook sort of the horrendous things, like the genuinely terrible things that happen, but it's those sort of just subtle problems or subtle ways to
Microaggressions?
yeah, let's say microaggressions would be a good word for it, right? It's those things that make it difficult for female gamers or that give, let's say, male gamers an advantage that people don't really think about, right? They think, okay, just because I'm not being aggressively or actively negative, there's no problem here. But it's those sort of small environmental triggers that can be, debilitating in and of themselves.
Yeah, like, for example, one of the things I noticed doing this was not just how I was treated, but when I started looking at the names that people chose for themselves, you're never seeing female names for 90% of the time. You're never seeing a person who's just like, Smoke Dog 420, Rebecca's on my team, and then, Susan. Those names don't come up. I did see Motherfucker, Suck a Dick, a person who had their
saw
name.
Fuck You.
I
Fuck
saw
yeah.
their name was just a gun. It was
Like
just
I've seen
Just
that.
like a
Yeah.
photo
I think
of
I
a
played
gun.
with that guy.
No, it was
Like
like a way you can like text type
Oh,
what
okay.
looks like
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
rifle.
And then I had someone who was tu madre, and they had what appeared to be double middle fingers surrounding it. And so
Think of,
even
like,
if they're not saying anything negative, and even if they're not doing anything to disrupt your game in any way, it's just that subtle thing that says you don't belong here.
Yeah.
It says, one, you're probably amongst children, or you're amongst people who act like
Mentally
children.
Yeah.
And it can be a little off-putting, especially if you're just learning and you're just starting out. Like, do I want to get into a game where this is the norm? And so I think that this was an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I had a pretty interesting time among the three of us regular show members. I had played the most Dota before, something close to like 2,000 hours played, and I was also on teams. We never got super competitive, but I had played a shit ton of Dota. I played this whole week, like the whole past week or two, almost all of my games exclusively female.
Jen gave me hell.
I know part of the experiment was to play some games in your female alias, some games in male, so you could compare. But I had thousands of hours of comparison, so in the time that I had, I wanted to get the most data points. I had a couple good quotes. The thing that we did notice the most was I did get friend requests almost every single game. Almost every game.
Hot.
I don't know what it was,
Here
but
now, it
generally,
sounds hot right now.
okay. So like even
It's true.
without the voice mod, I'm just generally a
Even without, I'm
decent
just getting friend
human being.
requests left and right. Everybody wants to be
That's
my
not
friend.
untrue though. Like when I was
That's not true.
when I played super regularly, people were friendly all the time in gaming. I was just like a nice person. I was a decent human being.
Being a decent human being on Dota,
Is
just
so
to be
rare.
fair, is so rare.
Right,
You
he's
get
basically
people
the Pope.
yelling at you.
He's
You
Mother
get people telling you. It's like 5 Kobe's on your team, but they all shoot like Josh Smith. It's terrible.
This
Where do
is
you
like
get these
90%
analogies
gaming
from?
podcast, 10% basketball podcast.
Like, what is going on right now?
But I get every single one. I'm like, yeah, Gino.
I'm
that's
so lost. Like,
that's very
I
accurate.
barely know who Kobe is. Holy
I want
Sports? Like
I want to talk about the sports end of the esports later on. I'm just getting warmed up.
Put the meat on the back burner for a second. We're just bringing the sports to the forefront.
So, like, in game, I have people on my, like, you know, that I know in real life. I've looked at their Dota profiles and they've got like 5 commends. In game, it's an option for you to commend the player for being like friendly or a good leader or, you know, just a nice person. You can like give them a thumbs up on their profile. I got like 70 commends right now just because I'm generally like a nice person, even though some of my other friends have played 3 times as long as I have. Well, that trend continued, but it was amplified so much. Like, I got friend requests every single game. I got comments for no reason. I got comments where I fed like an idiot, but I was just nice about it. So they're like, oh, friendship comment. Like, okay, people seem to treat me artificially nice because they thought I was a female. So it's true. I didn't get like death threats, rape threats, ask for your personal information, those kind of scary things. But the whole point of the experiment was that we wanted to see if there was a difference in experience, and my experience definitely was different. It was not what it normally is.
Yeah.
Couple good quotes, actually. Couple good quotes was
Was that a player name? Quotes?
I don't have the player names just for their privacy, whatever, but something to the effect of, obviously you can't last hit, you don't have a penis.
Oh, wow.
I think I read that in a biology textbook somewhere, though. That
It
might
does
be
make us
anatomically.
harder. It does make it harder for us girls to aim. I'm not gonna lie.
I missed the character
then-
who hits other people with their penis. I probably would have picked him if I saw him.
That's tough.
There was one where
is tough.
Gino and I were both in game together, and someone said either we're playing with girls or a couple of fags.
And that's the thing, right? Yeah. Any other one?
Those are the 2 that I saved because they were the most outstanding. They like
in their way.
they made the most sense, but there were other like little ones like, wait, are you a girl? And they weren't in like, the reason I wrote them down is because they weren't in text. I have, you know, replays of some good text dialogue, but they weren't as notable as those 2 were. Like I said, I had only been playing for about a week, so if you extrapolate that across my entire Dota career, which includes like 2 years, that gives me 100 different instances like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the thing too, to see how much of the stuff happened to these guys just in the 10 hours they were playing. And when you
multiply
do
that
extrapolate,
by
and yeah, so, and the thing is, right, I think, you know, if we look at esports as a whole and gaming as a whole, it's definitely becoming more mainstream, and that's what we were talking about too with, you know, sort of the esports movement and these huge tournaments like the last international being $18 million and being on ESPN2 and all of these things. And the problem is it's a culture, like the gaming culture is not something that the general culture is sort of aware of. And if you look at, was it Jimmy Kimmel this week? Yeah.
That was this week, yep.
Yeah, and that whole thing where he was making fun of people for watching people play video games. And it's something you just don't get, right? Like if you've never experienced that sort of culture, it really is akin to watching professional sports. It's the same kind of
There was
idea.
the option in my town, and many towns, in fact, to go to a movie theater and watch the international at a 4-star theater, and you'd pay a premium price for a ticket, and you'd get like a 3.5-hour basically movie experience.
And it's more than that too. It's like a mini con. They call them pub stomps, and they do them at like either bars or movie theaters, like you were saying.
Back in StarCraft, they had bar crafts.
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually took my son. I went to a pub stomp last year in Toronto, and it was great. They had like cosplayers and prizes. The cosplayers were just giving stuff away. They gave my son, who was 5 at the time, a Logitech G602 mouse, which he
Wow.
has kindly given to me.
Nice, cool.
It's just way too big for his hand, but I bought him a really cool mouse that looks like a stealth bomber, but in place of my really cool gaming mouse that I'm now very attached to. But yeah, there's like cosplayers. They had it was in a theater that they used for the Toronto International Film Festival, so they had the backdrops all set up for pictures. There were professional photographers. Like, I mean, the event was amazing, and this was just one little corner of it. It wasn't even, I mean, they used
There are people whose like paid careers are casting these games and reporting on these games and writing on these games and producing the websites that host this content. Like, this is so real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the problem that we see is with anything like this that's new to the general culture doesn't understand it, and they judge it on not the best that it has to offer, like all of these kind of experiences, but the worst. So when things happen like Gamergate, everybody then hates all these gamers, which I don't think is valid. And then you see really bad episodes of frickin' Law and Order about gaming.
To be fair, all episodes of Law and Order are very bad episodes.
Oh, come on.
What?
It was painful.
Of SVU
Jack
from the
McCoy,
last
no,
like 20
fuck
years.
original.
All right.
Boy, right? Lenny Briscoe.
Oh,
Look,
come-
Boys.
I can go Lenny Briscoe, Jack McCoy all day. Ice-T is great, but they do exploitative shit like this pulled out of the news all the time.
Gotta look
True.
at the original.
True.
And I watched the Gamergate episode of Law and Order, and the reason I watched it was because I knew it was going to be bad. But I watched it because my mom's like, they were talking about your video game stuff on Law and Order, and I was like, oh god.
Thanks,
and
Ma.
so I wanted to know what my mom was seeing about it, and it was actually kind of good in the sense of I could tell her that was a whole bunch of crap, and it was so painful to watch them try and like use cool lingo. You know what I mean?
Are these noobs that you're pulling?
Yes, it was
But like that.
What is...
Why are they spelling their words with threes?
yeah, like what does leet mean?
Lathreet?
Is this 2007? Are we still using leet speak?
Listen, I use leet speak. It's part of my soul. But what actually was kind of cool this year is that my son was at my mom's during the international this year, and because we went to that pub stomp and he loves RTZ, and I don't even know.
Artor.
I don't know why. But I do have a video of my kid at 5 years old going, too easy for RTZ.
Oh, yes.
It's on YouTube. Check it out. He was at my mom's this year during TI, so he wanted to watch the games. So I sent her the links, and she actually sat down and watched some of the finals. And she was like, "And so, how do you get up there on that stage?" I'm like, "Play more Dota than I have time for." Like, it just, and I'm too old now, I think is also the thing.
TI5? RTC?
I made my son a shirt for last year's TI, and it said "Road to TI 16" on the back. I thought,
Aw.
Wow, let's go.
Mom of the Year award.
hey, you know what?
On that note, I think
well,
it's a good time to
it's about break
transition.
time.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a quick break, then we're gonna come back, and I want to talk about the esports end of it, more than just this kind of mixed bag of experiences. So we'll be back in a bit. And we're back. We're back again talking Dota DOS. And Pete, you wanted to make a point.
I did want to make a point, and it's an excellent point. So, just based on the way esports are, right, it should, you would think, be much more inclusive, right? Because think about, like, basketball or football or something. Here's where strength differences, gender differences become much more exasperated, just in the nature of the sport. But you look at something like esports, right? It welcomes all body types, all athletic abilities, right? So by its very nature, you would expect men and women to be able to coexist much more easily.
Yeah.
Much easier?
You're the
Easier.
English major.
Easier?
Much easier? You should expect men and women to coexist much more easily, but for some reason that's not the case, and it's probably, cultural related, because it's certainly not inherent to the game itself. Unless, men have slower fingers or something that I'm not aware of.
My fiance actually, when I first started playing Dota, because he was the one who got me into it, was like, once you get this, because it was so frustrating when you first learn how to play, because there's so much detail. But he said, once you get it, you're going to be better at this game than I am, because like I actually met my fiance playing World of Warcraft, and he plays World of Warcraft like click casts everything. Like he barely uses his keyboard for anything, and it infuriates me. So because
He's gotta go look in his skill tree and like open up a window to click something.
Look, not everyone can use hotkeys, all right, guys? There are a lot of buttons.
No, in raids, he's like click, cast, click, cast. I'm like,
that's actually kind of more impressive.
The fact that we actually down some of the raid bosses was impressive, but
That'd
like
playing
it
a
hurt
piano
me.
with two hands.
It's like chopsticks all the time. But it was infuriating. But he was right. Like once I got I am better than him now. But gaming as a whole has always been a community I've felt at home with, because even growing up, I kind of gravitated more to, like, most of my friends in high school were guys, and yeah, I've always been a nerd. Like I used to play LARP, and this is like, and so I've always sort of felt at home in that kind of a community. And it's a group that's always sort of embraced me from my interests and skills. So you're right that it should be more inclusive, just because it doesn't separate those actual physical differences.
Yeah.
I'm going to say you made some great points, and I'm not going to directly counter them, right? But I'm going to add like a different element. So before I was into Dota, I was into a lot of other pro gaming scenes. One of the major ones was StarCraft Brood War before it became StarCraft 2, and then I followed StarCraft 2 heavily. I also follow games like Street Fighter versus Capcom, all these other kind of like fighting games that became big, especially in things like Evo and stuff, since they became really, really popular. And there is if we're going to talk about classifications of people, you've got race, class, gender, age, all these sort of things. Gaming itself should be more inclusive, but right now it's skewed towards age as the primary, the primary stat that's separating you from being competitive. And it sounds weird, but there's been studies to show that after a person reaches the age of like 20, their reaction time, their actions per minute, their keyboard dexterity, like that's where it peaks, and it goes down after that. So it's impressive that somebody like Fear on Evil Geniuses, Grandpa Fear, won the international with his team.
How old is Grandpa Fear actually?
26.
Yeah, that's old.
Grandpa Fear.
Right? Somebody like IX Mike, who is still in the scene, kind of kind of not that much since Liquid disbanded, but IX Mike still streams. Cool guy. He's a little bit older.
IX Mike or 9 Mike?
I'm pretty sure
it's IX Mike.
I'm pretty sure it's IX Mike. Anyway, but there are some older players. But then you've got 15-year-old Sumail, who just won
$1.2 million.
$1.2 million for his family. He was 16, I think, when he won the international.
With $1.2 million.
No, 16 years. Yeah, he's 16
when
he
won.
Bugatti,
drive a permit.
It's funny that you just talked about buying a Bugatti and you don't know anything about Dota, and it makes my heart happy.
So, like, Dota is not actually a very good example, because there have been people who have broken that rule. You look at a game like StarCraft when it was the dominant esport in the scene, and if you were over the age of 20, it was amazing if you were still playing StarCraft, because there were people that were 15, 16, 17 winning the GSL, because you have to be that age in order to have 300 APM to win a StarCraft match.
So, just a question. I don't I didn't read any of those studies. How much of that is a factor of just natural decay of reaction time, and how much of that is availability of practice time? Like, as you're aging, at a certain point, dedicating tens and 20s of hours, 70, 80 hours a week, like a full-time job, to just practicing and playing just stops being feasible if you're living a healthy life, doing other things. You would need to be unemployed. And if you're unemployed, you probably don't have a rig and, the capability and electricity and internet to actually keep your habit and your practice going. Habit if you're not very good. If you become professional, then it's your practice. But at a certain point, just staying up on your game seems like it would be very difficult.
So I can answer your question only as far as I looked into this research. The research is specifically brain related, not necessarily hands. It's not like people are getting arthritis at the age of 19, so they can't play Street Fighter anymore. But there's this peak in brain function, and I know that someone is going to come fact check me and say, "Oh, you're close, but not quite, idiot. You should read more carefully."
No, we get like one comment. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
anyway, there's like a peak in brain
I'm
function
do a lot of research and come back
where your reactivity, your response time hits a peak. And when we're talking about the highest of highest competitive levels, that's what's important. If you are not in the top 1-2%, no, forget it. There's 6 million active players in Dota. If you're not in the top 1% of 1%, you're not going to be competitive in the scene. When the numbers are like that, something like you losing 4% of your reaction time because you went from age 19 to 23 is huge.
Yeah, but I just wonder, because at least in the sports that I follow, like not just esports, basketball is my go-to. Football less so, because football, it's hard to have a career beyond 27, 28.
Yeah. Averages.
But on average.
Because brain damage.
Yeah, it does brain damage, and people tear up ligaments all the time, and once you do, they don't want to pay you anymore. But for sports like basketball, sports like baseball, there's a amount of wisdom and skill that you build up, just knowledge of matchups and ways to approach things, that can mitigate a loss of dexterity. So you get players who play into their 30s and 40s, even though by no means should they be able to do what they're doing. But because they know what their opponent's going to do before they do it, or they know the way to attack them properly, they can offset those physical losses. And Dota seems like a game that just lends itself so strongly to expressing that wisdom. Like the picks. You can win a game before the game starts if your picks and bans are especially good. If you know something about the game that other people don't.
I would say that most games are decided at the end of the draft phase.
And so I think that at a certain point, I wonder if people are getting cut out of the scene because they're aging out of it, they start having work, and at a certain point, it's hard to put the time in, just the sheer keeping your skills up. And that's what's breaking down the reaction times.
You have to, sorry.
Go ahead.
You have to also, it is that, I think that's definitely a part of it, but you look at the availability of when these games started, and, people who are, say, older than 35 weren't introduced to video games in the same way that people under 35 were. So I don't know if we even have a cross-section that would allow you to know that, because people older than that probably would have no interest in even learning how to play most of these games.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
That's a good point.
The option to be a pro gamer was non-existent actually 10 years ago outside of Korea.
Yeah, so that data set, we're going to see, I guess, when these pro players start aging out of it, then we'll start seeing. I just want to see someone with an old...
has little kids, when he has little baby Arturs and they enter the scene, now we're going to be able to make a comparison.
Okay. I just want to see someone with an old man Dota game. Like that guy.
Like the Andre Miller of Dota.
Yeah. This guy, look,
the Brett Favre of Dota.
He's not ulting as fast as he used to. We all know that.
But he's playing Tidehunter, the tendrils are still reaching.
But look at how that blink that he did, if it was a millimeter off, he would have gotten hit. But this guy, he knows the game inside
He's
and
got
out.
that frame data.
It's like listening to you guys is like somebody speaking English and then just like lapsing into just gibberish for like 2 or 3 words and then coming back in.
It's, you know, Dota.
Yeah, so hopefully tie these analogies a little bit closer so maybe Pete can understand.
Yeah, let's make it easy for the resident moron on this week's podcast.
I'm sorry.
Give a little bit more information.
It's okay. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how Dota kind of is a pickup game, a game that it's 5-on-5. I think its closest analog is pickup basketball in terms of how I understand it. Everyone has a very clearly, well, in an ideal situation in both cases,
Yeah.
in both Dota and basketball.
Breaks down frequently, but
people should have a defined role and they have a defined skill set that they should stick to. In Dota, it's mostly based on what hero you're picking and if you know how to play that hero. In basketball, it's knowing your limitations and knowing how you should be playing. I can't shoot. I shouldn't shoot this three-pointer.
There are some roles in basketball. Like there are names for positions in basketball. You have, forward, center, point guard. They're not as defining.
we just use
And
numbers.
Yeah.
So like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, like now we're on a subject I know
you
about.
use
We
numbers
use numbers in
too.
Dota too.
What? No.
1 through
You
5.
do.
So,
So,
1 is the
Haya, go
main
for it.
carry.
I shouldn't have started.
Okay. No, okay.
No, do it.
1 is the main carry. That's the person you funnel the most farm to.
So
2 plays mid.
all right.
3 is the offlane player. 4 is the support that still gets some gold and generally items. And I play 5th position support, which is you get no gold, you buy all wards, and
Let me
you
put
get
this
no
into
farm.
my brain.
Point guard.
So, in basketball, 1 is point guard, 2 is shooting guard, 3 is small forward, 4 is power forward, 5 is center. So, I don't think that they map 1-to-1 necessarily because you're not always in Dota. You split up into side groups where it's kind of a two-player game for a while against another 2 players, and then you'll reunite in 5-on-5 game, or it's 1-on-1 in mid, and so it kind of you move and shake a whole lot. But I think it's really interesting that the best Dota teams are ones that really understand their roles and understand that we should be playing in a certain way. The best pickup games are when everyone knows, and not just everyone knows what role they should be playing, but they know how to work in concert. Like, I'm going to set this pick so that it frees someone else up for a shot. I'm going to set this pick because it's going to get an open layup, and not just setting picks because they can set picks. And in Dota, that's mostly stuns. I'm not just going to stun this person because I can stun them. I'm going to stun them because that's going to open them up to someone else using a move that doesn't stun but needs them to be in one place.
And I mean, the thing is, I think when you're playing sort of a pickup game of Dota, you just pray that somebody else on your team will play support. I think is because everybody wants to go mid and carry.
Yeah,
So
and
Everybody wants
the
to jack
way that
threes.
I think it closer resembles basketball, if we're going to just continue this for a second, is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metaphor in Dota is still applicable, but now it's sort of been simplified to you're going to have cores and supports. Usually you're going to have 3 cores and 2 supports. And anyone who's into sports can look at a stat sheet and say, all right, on this 5 or 6 person rotation during this game, I don't know how many players will hit the field at one time in basketball, if it's just
If
5
none
or
will
if
hit the
there's 7 or
field,
8.
I can promise you not a single one will hit the field. They'll hit
What?
the court.
Sorry. I'm
No,
I'm the resident moron now.
Now I get to be all
It's
pedantic.
okay.
Like,
mean,
no,
Pete,
not fields.
So
You made Rothgar tote sports.
how many people, more than 5, will enter into a normal basketball game if it's like a real NBA game? Is there only going to be 5, or is it going to be 6 or 7?
Playoffs, probably 8.
8 tops.
Yeah.
8 tops in the
And
playoffs.
if you take all the points scored, divided among how many players, like who's actually scoring the points? 4 out of those 8 players? 3 out of those 8 players?
3, yeah.
I would say probably 3 out of those players are scoring 80-90% of the points.
Not that heavy, probably closer to 60-70%, but yeah.
Vast majority then. And that should reflect in Dota as well.
It does.
So
And it does.
you are going to have your 3 cores getting 60, 70, 80% of the kills in the game, while your supports are going to be getting the assists, setting up for those kills, getting good positioning, getting good vision, getting good items that disable some of your opponent's abilities, etc. So
Or
that's
if
what this
more
is
of a
about.
defense, so you can, and there's different strats. Like a 4 protect one is the whole team is protecting that carry because they know, once they have a certain amount of farm and a certain amount of items, then they can come
That
through and
carry
just
can win
wipe.
the entire team fight by themselves. People like
So when you
Medusa.
so when you play in a support role like I do, basically you're making sure that the carries can get farm, and you're doing that by getting map control, making sure you can see where other people are, so warding um
Things that
and
Pete never
funneling
got to
them farm.
experience.
So like the jungle camps in the jungle, you can actually stack those. So there's like 3 or 4 camps in there, each like 3 or 4 sets of creeps in there, so they can get more farm as they move across the map. There's like, so you look so confused right now.
Okay, so
I'm
she's
always confused.
she's getting a lot of assists.
That's advanced
Yeah.
stuff.
She's Steve Nash.
Gotcha. But look, I mean, even so, this is where we get to like learning curve issues, right? And this is
Yes.
where the community becomes an issue. If you come to play pickup basketball, presumably the other people will help you. I don't know, Gino, have you ever had anybody tell you to uninstall your basketball sneakers?
No, that's one thing I want to. That's one thing I want to talk about is just the difference in the experience. One, I don't know if it's just because there's a lack of accountability in Dota. Like the worst thing that can happen to you is you get put into low priority, and maybe you can get banned, but you'd have to really cross some lines to get banned. I would think.
You'd have to break rules of the game. Like
I've never heard of someone getting banned.
it's
You'd have to probably like dox somebody, or in some
Or,
other
like-
ways compromise their Steam
hack
account
their-
or something.
you can
You'd
run
have to do
script
something weird.
programs and stuff that'll get you banned.
True, like auto casting certain items on
Yeah.
heroes. There was actually a video out about using a script to auto cast orchids on people.
Yeah.
But let me put it to you this way: if someone said 80% of the things that someone has said that is rude to me in person that they say on Dota, there would be a fight, or that person would not be playing with me anymore.
And the other players wouldn't tolerate it either.
And the other people would tell them, stop doing that. You're being an asshole.
And that's a product of the internet, right? Like everybody's
Yeah.
brave behind their computer screen. And I think that's, a much larger program. Like look at any comments on a YouTube video.
Exactly. And that's something that I think Dota, it's working towards sorting out, like with low priority and building those systems in and building in the commend system. It seems like people really care about them because every game it's like, commend me. I did really well. Come on, commend me.
I don't commend any of those.
They say,
people, for the
recommend me,
record.
please.
Yes, they don't get anything.
Do you,
But I
do you
think it's
part of
important.
it?
Go ahead.
Do you think part of it is that, like basketball, no one's really protective of the knowledge itself, right? Like if you want to learn how to shoot a skyhook, hell, I don't know how to shoot a skyhook, but if I did,
I do.
all right, if I wanted to learn a skyhook,
It's the only shot
Gino
Gino
would
ever
teach-
takes.
Do you think in Dota, because the game's so complicated and sort of so difficult to learn, people are then protective of that knowledge? They don't want to let other people in because they themselves have had to work so hard to get there.
I think that's part of it. I think that the thing is there's so much. So basketball has a cultural cachet that people kind of are expected to by osmosis if they've seen the game or have talked about the game. If you live in American culture, basketball is around you.
You know something about the game.
You know something about the game. You know shooting. You know how the scoring works. You probably know what fouls look like.
Yeah.
Some of that basic stuff. You might not know positions. You might not know who's good at any particular time, but it's probably the person putting the ball in the hoop. And you can tell these things. And if you step on a court, you're not going to be starting from zero. You'll know that dribbling, you have to dribble. Like, you might screw up, but you're not going to be at absolute nothing. But, like, you starting Dota, it is a mountain to even understand. You don't know what last hits are.
Nope.
You don't know how to control your character. You don't know what any of these heroes do. You don't know what you should be doing. You might not know what the objective of the game is.
I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing.
The tutorial in Dota 2 is not good enough.
Now it will be. It's getting better with the new like Dota 2 Reborn. on the Source 2 platform. They're revamping that to try and make the game a little more accessible. But I think you're right with the
accessibility.
Yeah, the thing is, you kind of hit the nail on the head with protecting that knowledge, because it's not a very accessible game. So when you're in, in the game and you're playing with people who are, either really good or even mid-tier players, you feel like you've accomplished something really great because it's not an accessible game. And they're trying to make it more accessible. And I don't know if that will help or hinder the community issues.
Now, I'll say in addition that while some players are trying to protect knowledge, other players are trying to protect themselves. And it's so easy to throw the blame on somebody else for no other reason than to get it off of you.
I'm telling you right now, if you're in a game of 4 people and you've picked up one pub and you lose that game, it was that pub's fault. I don't care if he was a star player, that guy.
Yeah, right. Like if you're in a 4-stack and then one random you lose, their fault, But it seems like, and I'm going to be the last person to be able to make great in-game decisions in a game of Dota because I've been playing for 2 years and still don't know shit about this game, So in-game, things go bad. There's 1,000 reasons why it went bad.
Yeah, and
in order to make sure that you don't appear to know nothing after all of your efforts, you need to put the blame on somebody else.
And I think something that's worth mentioning in terms of accessibility is in basketball, there are a few discrete skills you need to learn. And once you've learned those discrete skills, you're kind of good. Depending on who you're playing with, you might use a certain shot more or you might pass more. And you blend your skill set and pick from your kind of bag of tricks depending on what you need at any given time. Whereas in Dota, there are over 100 characters that each have their own distinct skill sets that you need to master.
And you could skill them differently from game to game based on your opponents.
And from game to game, like, it's not just necessarily knowing your own limits, it's knowing which of these over 100 bags of tricks you want and then how to use that particular bag of tricks. And the problem is, if you want to just learn one hero, the chances are from game to game in public matches, you'll end up with people who see you make that pick and don't care and don't cater themselves to what you're doing. So you could end up picking a character who you know really well, but everyone around you has picked stuff that completely doesn't help you at all. And then you're just screwed, and the game is just a bummer, and it's a wasted hour of your time. And so learning Dota, it's one of the only games where you don't say just like learn one character and then get good at it. Like in Street Fighter, you might say just learn Ryu, and then once you learn Ryu, you're kind of okay. You'll learn the basics, and then you can graduate to other characters. Whereas Dota, if you try to start with one character, it's possible that because of your teammates and because of your opponents, you just never get a feeling like you're, hitting the ground.
And you could play the same character over and over and over again. Like my main plate is Witch Doctor. That's like my go-to hero.
Yeah.
And depending on how that lane is going, depends on how I skill build. And depending on how my farm is going, because I'm usually a 5th position support, depends on which items I get first. And that's a whole other ball game, is the items. And because it's not just your activatable skills, then those items you have to use as well, and knowing when to buy which one. And it's even, that's one of the things I love about Dota, is in the almost 5,000 hours I've played, no two games are ever the same. Ever.
So, quick number crunch. If my math is correct, just heroes, not even items, just heroes, different combination of heroes, we're in the quadrillions.
Was that a real number? How
Yes,
much is a
it's
quadrillion?
After trillion.
So 1,000 trillions?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's just for combinations. And then the items replicate some of them replicate skills from heroes and kind of give access to those skills to heroes who don't normally have it. Some of them are completely unique and do stuff that only they do. and then some of them are just utility stuff. But,
I'm only
and then
talking
there's-
about characters, like not even their skills, not even their items. Just like if you have 5 people on one team and 5 people on the other, and there's over 100 characters, what the combinations could be, it's like 4 or 5 times 10 to the 14th or something like that. Yeah, it's awful.
Luckily, some of those character combinations are terrible, and no one will ever use them. So that's fortunate.
And luckily, depending on the meta, you only see 5 different heroes. So
See
which
techies
is a
every
whole-
game.
Whole different problem.
and that's depending on your skill build. If you're at like 2K MMR, which is your matchmaking rating. So as you play, you gain ranks and you gain MMR points. And so
I'm level 12.
Well, okay, so
no,
there's
that's different. The
Is there a
level is
level
different
lower
than
than
MMR.
0? Could I be
Rank-
like -6? Is that? That's
Hiya,
not-
we actually could not play ranked because the other
They
two
haven't
people
had
in the
enough
room
game played.
haven't had enough games to play ranked.
Mm-hmm. So when you start playing ranked matches, you get an MMR, and so which is your matchmaking rating,
like your
and
elo.
so the pros are like 8K, 9K.
Yeah, my MMR does not even deserve 4 digits right now. Like, I feel so embarrassed.
And I'm like 3K.
That's a lot of Ks. That's a good amount of Ks.
That's a, you
That's way
know.
more Ks than I have.
I was gonna- no one cares.
But
I haven't even got,
generally,
I'm like at A's and B's. I haven't even gotten a K.
generally, my problem with raising my MMR is that I play support, which hinders it, and that I'm used to playing with like 4 or 5K players, and so when I actually play ranked matches, which is so rare, and then I go back down to 3K, I still expect my team members to actually know what they're doing and play as a team, and that is a hindrance as well.
Yeah, and that was actually one thing about Dota that I wanted to talk about was teamwork and kind of finding a group to play with. Seems like it's one of the only games where the default way to play is it's matchmaking like normal you would expect in a video game. But since it's a sport, or it can be played as a sport of 5 players, you really want teamwork and coordination, and finding a group of 4 random people to team up with is sometimes one of the worst ways to get familiarity and experience and teamwork. And so I feel like the default way of playing from the start, you're kind of handicapped sometimes because you're getting these pools that just, they don't know what they're doing and they're not teaching you. And so you're just stuck spinning your wheels until you go on a website and see the actual way you should be doing these
That's
things.
how I had to learn when I was first starting to play, and then even more so when I was trying to be on a team, kind of try-hard style, was I would go onto forums, I would go onto YouTube, and I would watch the pro streams, and I would study for hours upon hours. Like, when I wasn't playing, I was watching tutorials. When I wasn't playing, I was reading books. Literally, there's like turning
Gosh,
pages.
forbid, reading books.
Yeah, actually, I read a book.
This is what he reads books about.
Yeah.
Pete.
If you don't know that much about me, I
Not about
have so rarely read a hard book, an actual
He
book.
just reads soft books.
The
Just the
last,
softest
the-
book.
This book was the last book I think I read. It was The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Okay, that's
Wait, was that was that for Dota purposes?
It was for other purposes.
sort of it's a very, I'm not disparaging
It's great.
The Art of War by any means, but it's not James Joyce. Like, you can get through it in an afternoon.
True. It took me a
Nothing.
couple
Some
weeks.
of like when it
but
gets into stats
Maybe a
and like
couple weeks.
and
We're not
then
all
there's
English majors, okay?
There's websites devoted to Dota and like there's like the Standard Deviants. Their jobs are to run stats on Dota games, like
Just to see what the spread looked like on a
follow meta
game.
changes.
Or yeah, and like how many games, if you play this hero, what kind of boots do you get? And if you get these kind of boots, you have out of the pool, like these boots won 60% of the time, these boots won 30% of the time. Like something so dumb, like if you get treads or phase boots.
Mhm.
Something just dumb like that.
The more we talk about this, I mean, the more, and obviously it makes sense because it's a strategy game, but the more and more it sounds like chess.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
think
that's
about,
it, right?
yeah,
And
It's
people
more
equate
and
it
more
the
like
same way.
chess.
It's like chess where your queen can decide to, instead of moving to where you would like your queen to go, your queen goes to like the back corner and cuts off all of its angles, and then you're like, "What are you doing, queen? We need you to stun."
Or moves to a checkers board and is
just
playing
starts
a
playing a
whole
completely
different
different
game.
I wonder too if, like, there's a theory about chess where sort of the infinite possibilities lead to, or in some sense, self-select for schizophrenia. Like people go crazy just because there are too many options.
That's
I wonder
actually
if we'll see
one of
that
the
for
reasons
Dota.
why computers have a hard time. Like there was a time when computers could just handily beat humans at chess.
Yeah,
And now humans have established dominance once again. I'm not a chess master, but a buddy of mine is
Down in humans.
a good friend of mine plays chess regularly and knows a little bit more about this than I do, and he was telling me about it the other day. But one of the reasons why the computers have a hard time keeping up is because humans actually have the ability to ignore 90% of the possibilities that are out there.
yeah. Well,
And a computer has to run all the options
the
by
way
their nature.
humans and computers play chess is completely differently. Like chess,
Right.
chess playing computers break it down based on those percentages, right? If I move my pawn here in the 3 million games that are in my data banks, I win, let's say 60% of the time or something. They can self-select based on point values of positions, but you're definitely right, Billy. They have to run through these massive number crunches for every single move. I did a
And
paper on this.
similarly, in a game like Dota, but also take it outside of Dota, let's talk about Street Fighter. Like if you play a character like, let's just keep it simple, like Ken
Who's the one whose arm stretches?
Dalsim.
Yeah, well, let's play as him.
Fine. If you want to play as a Dalsim, like what is your success rate, between your Ultra 1 and your Ultra 2? Or what is your success rate between what your air-to-air moves are when you go, when two characters jump into the air, what move do you use to attack? Well, it depends on what kind of frame advantages you have. Take it outside of Street Fighter. Let's go back to StarCraft. When you play Zerg or you play Protoss or you play Terran, do you open do you open 10 hatch as Zerg or like 12 hatch as Zerg? Do you get your, when do you get your gas and what are your win rates? All this stuff is just tons and tons of data. And it lends to this thing like you cannot just jump into a game like this without knowing your shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
even if you
what-
play bot games, the difference between playing against bots and playing against humans, it's funny because when you first play, they're like, "Oh, play against bots," and then you play against bots, and
They
and
go
when you
5-man at 9 minutes.
exactly, it's easier to play against a group of humans than it is to play against a group of bots.
Sometimes
Yeah,
bots can actually line up their stuns right.
bots can hit more stuns than they actually have. There are some serious issues. Those guys are jerks.
And one thing that I notice with Dota is just that in a lot of sports, there's only one ball. So if you're on offense, you're on offense. If you're on defense, you're on defense. And if you're on offense, one person's shooting. Only one person is capable of scoring at any given time. Whereas in Dota, all 10 players are capable of scoring and being scored on at all times. You can have one player who just... They shouldn't matter, but they keep running themselves into the opposing team, giving them farm.
I did that. That's what I did. That was my strategy.
You fed.
Yeah, I was just like, if they kill me enough times, they'll run out of bullets or something. I don't know what I
You
was
should
thinking.
probably not provide sustenance to the enemy team. That's a
Now
bad
that
way
you
to
said,
play.
now that you put it that way, it makes perfect sense. But
Well, I guess the better way to say it is only a few characters are actually capable of winning the game at any given time, but every single player is capable of losing it. And
That's so true.
that is something that is just most other games, like physical games, don't have, because they usually have some sort of limiting factor there where at a certain point you can only turn over the ball so much. And turnovers, even if you turn the ball over, the opponent still has to put it in the hoop. Whereas in Dota, you can actually just walk up to a tower and let it kill you.
is it like in basketball, it'd be possible for one individual to put the team on the back and carry them to glory? How good would you have to be at Dota to put a team on your back?
Okay, who wants to explain carries to him?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Could someone whose
Yeah,
mic always works do
Can
it?
just
Okay,
not Billy
fine.
do it.
Okay, so essentially, in a 4 protect 1 strategy, you have the carry, you funnel the farm to them. Everybody supports that person to get them what they need. We're talking like Gatorade and orange slices, all to that guy. So I'm not good at sports.
No, that was perfect.
That's
and
perfect.
and then he can go through. There are times their carries, once they're well farmed, can go and kill the entire enemy team.
But would it be possible for him to do that having to do his own farm, if I'm using the terminology?
Yes, that's entirely possible. But the thing is, you have to be a certain set of characters to have that.
Have that
I
ability.
I think what
Okay.
Pete's looking for is more like a snowball hero, which is going to be more like a storm spirit or
Yeah, no, Storm
like a
Spirit.
Lena.
Yeah, no, that's what I was. Yeah, Storm Spirit was what I was looking for. Yeah.
There's a few that
I think
can
Pete is
snowball.
thinking about somebody who can, regardless of what everybody else is doing, like they just own it so
Yeah.
hard.
Like the other 4 dudes wander into a corner.
They might not
My
even
guy
be
says,
there.
With the team on my back.
There's distraction techniques too, right? If you
There
have
is.
if you have like Nature's Prophet or those guys, basically they're people who can or Tinker, that's a good pusher hero.
Tinker's a great,
I hate Tinker.
a great example.
Tinker. But
Fuck
they
Tinker.
can go all over the map and they can push lanes really hard effectively and take towers. So you can have 4 of your players on your team. Say you have a Tinker on your team. The other 4 are distracting that team, and the Tinker is just killing everything
Doing
on the
Tinker
other side of
stuff.
the map.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It comes
But-
down to this. There are multiple win conditions. You could win the game by all of your heroes getting stronger than all of the other team's heroes. And that means that at any time you want, you can destroy the critical building inside the enemy's base. Or you could play a hero that ignores the standard objectives, does something completely different in game, changes the entire dynamic of the game, and if the game is allowed to be played on their terms, the game is won before it
Techies.
starts. Techies.
Techies or Meepo.
Or Meepo.
Oh,
Or Nature's Prophet. Or Tinker. Some other good
Yeah,
examples are
there's-
out there,
There's lots.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think that's important to mention is, in a basketball context, because there is one ball, if that person who's really good just says, give me the ball and get out of my way, and they're capable of just doing it, you'll win. They can win the game by themselves because the other players are not capable of screwing it up. Like, they would have to literally be setting picks on their own teammate to screw it up.
And that happens in Dota.
In Dota, if the other 4 players not only aren't like capable of winning the game, if they are not good, they will lose all of their individual matchups over and over and over again. And at a certain point, the opposing team will just have so much money, even if this one player has been crushing it, they're not capable of doing it. Whereas if you have a strategy that is like, these 4 characters are supporting this one, and we know that this one character is going to be the one who cleans it all up for us, even though those other 4 characters aren't capable of winning the game or really threatening the other team by themselves, they know that this was built in. We were always going to give Kobe the ball in the last 10 seconds, and he was just going to take care of it, and he's going to carry us home. So you have to really set it up, whereas in basketball, someone can literally take the ball and say, no, I'm doing this. Stop screwing me up. Or I'm going to block this shot.
Yeah.
But in Dota, it's just, you can have so many variables where teammates aren't coordinating properly, or the teamwork isn't on point, or you've picked a character because you thought that the teamwork would be better and it isn't, and now you're not capable of putting the team on your back because you just don't have the abilities to do it. And so it's way more complex. This game is so damn complex. And it's really amazing. I love like playing 5-man, like with a team of people. When I'm in the same room with those people, it is an amazing game. It's so much fun.
Well, I was drunk that time, so
or soul crushing. It goes both ways.
Yeah, but
It's fun.
At least then you're talking with your friends and you're getting better, and
You're with your boys, or your gals.
or girls.
Yeah.
Or both.
Or yeah, whatever.
Intermingling. But when you go in pubs just solo, it's
It's painful sometimes.
it's such a different experience. And it's like practicing and you don't know if you're getting anything out of it sometimes. And I just wish that I could always have 5 people that are ready to play and I like and would like to spend time with.
You should join Reborn Dominion.
No, I'm gonna uninstall Dota. I can't have this in my life anymore.
There you go. That's what we're doing.
No, my answer is uninstall Dota.
That was the advice I got, so I'm just going to follow.
You're just going to go with it?
Well, that is a good idea.
But yeah, this was all a very great experience. Thank you, Haya, for setting this all up for us. Thank you for showing us this awesome experiment. I will try to fill out the survey. Where can people find it if they want to go into this very cool thing?
It's a weird sort of link, like altachoco.wix.com/playlikeagirl. Do you have somewhere you can link
will
it?
put it in the description somewhere. Our listeners will be able to find it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think the whole thing is, jerks are going to be jerks, and it doesn't, really matter. But from an outside perspective, if we want to legitimize esports for the culture at large, we need to make gaming a safer and more inclusive experience for everybody.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Billy, last thought.
Yeah, so I will say that my experience was different. That was the goal here. We were trying to address what it's like to step into somebody else's shoes. And afterwards we could get a new outlook, a new understanding, and I've gotten that. It's lucky on my part that my experiences were mostly positive. Not saying that they were correct or right, because getting additional friendship or likes isn't necessarily appropriate either, because that could just be unwanted attention. The same way you wouldn't want to have, some girl at the supermarket getting stared at because she's pretty. Like, that's also just as inappropriate as.
That's also creepy.
Yeah,
I woke up like this.
That's also creepy. Getting inappropriate levels of friend requests or commands or whatever, because I'm just a friendly person, but also now I'm in a female alias, made me realize that I'm playing by a different set of rules.
Yeah.
I'm playing under different circumstances. So even though my experience was not awful, like some people's were, I have a new outlook.
And Pete, last thoughts?
Sure. At the risk of offending our resident Dota players, fuck Dota. I'm going to uninstall it immediately after this and never play it again.
You're better off, son.
Yeah.
I promise.
I do think esports sort of has this inherent utopian dream to it, right? It's a situation that everybody should be able to play. Everyone should be able to come in, be welcomed, and have fun. And it just isn't that yet. We saw that through this experiment.
Well
And,
put.
just fingers crossed, one day we get to the point where esports lives up to that utopian vision.
Well said.
Agreed.
Well said.
That is a very
Very good.
hopeful, optimistic way to end this. So thank you very much for that. Next time, what are we thinking for the next podcast?
Jesus, it took so long to orchestrate this. I don't even know what we're thinking. Whose actual pick is it next?
Technically, this was my pick.
Technically.
So that
I'm
makes
sorry
it my
you didn't
pick
have
next,
that much
right?
fun.
It's all right. I got to play a game. Turned out I hated it, but whatever.
Now you know.
Now
and
I know.
The more you know.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that makes it my pick again, isn't it? Or is it your pick, Billy?
Does anybody have a pick?
Actually,
Why don't we start
technically, if this was Pete's pick, then we're back to number 1, and I went first.
Okay.
So I mean, you put me on
Do
the
you have a
spot.
game,
I
Rob?
don't have a game right now, but we can update it again.
I always have one game that's in my back pocket.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, me too. I just don't know which one I want to do.
He has too many games.
I think it's funny that when Rothgar came to me and he's like, hey, you can pick any game and we'll all play it. I'm like, well, it makes sense to do Dota. And he's like, they're going to hate you.
I like Dota. It's just it's got complications.
Yeah. No, it's
I mean,
dope.
there are a couple of games that I've been really wanting to play because they have very cool stuff going on. If you want me to pick one now, I can just pick one.
Yes, I would like you to pick one now. On the spot.
Right now?
We can edit out the silence.
All right. I'm going to pick a game.
This isn't a guessing contest. Just fucking tell us the title.
All right. I'm gonna
21 questions.
pick Valda's Story: Abyssal City.
Oh.
It's a game that I played a bunch of. It's gonna be reminiscent of Metroidvania style games,
I saw you playing this.
And it's really good. It's a very good game. I had a ton of fun playing it. It's going to be like Devil May Cry mixed with
I like Devil May Cry.
like Metroid mixed with Castlevania, all that good shit just rolled into one, plus multiple characters, plus replayability. I'm probably going to play on hard mode 100%. Like,
hey, remember how I called him the Grind Father?
oh man.
Oh, we're grinding.
I played
We're
this.
gonna be
Okay,
grinding.
I haven't
I will
grinded
say
since the last
you don't have to grind your face off to get to the end of this game, but I'm going to get every item and
But
beat
I
every
am.
boss, and I'm going to get S rank on everything, even if it takes me 18 more hours than it takes you guys.
The bat. What's the platform though? Like, can I play this?
Yeah,
PC.
it's just on Steam.
It's on Steam.
Yeah.
PC.
Do I need a mouse?
so-
Because I don't have.
No, a
You
controller
really need to get
would
a
be
mouse.
better, but you can just plug in like any old like
have a
Xbox or PS3 controller and play on your computer.
Perhaps the reason you hate Dota so much is because you played on a Mac with
That
trackpad.
didn't help. I can promise you that didn't help.
That
To be fair, we gave him no real prep because we were hoping to like Sherpa him through this experience, but our schedules didn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't even able to tell him objectives or
God.
how to play.
Nope.
So
Didn't know what I was
he
trying
just
to
poor
kind of got
bastard.
I was
just kind of
looking at
hit
stuff.
That's a bad
Find
intro
match.
to Dota.
And just jumped right in. All
I
right,
was
so
like,
as far as the next pick,
we're gonna
I
lose.
threw that out there just because I asked myself, what game have I played that had a profound impact on me recently? That game. It made me want to play it and replay it over and over again. It's a great game. It fits the Castlevania, Metroid style games,
Do it.
and it's
Okay.
relatively new.
So it is called Valdis Story
Just email.
colon
Yeah,
subtitle.
put
Yes.
the email. Put the title in the email.
It's
so I know
called
how to spell
Valdis
it.
Story,
Just
Abyssal
type it in
City.
the email.
The
I'll
listeners,
see it.
the listeners need to know.
All right, the listeners need to know.
Valdis Story colon subtitle.
That's our next game.
Abyssal City.
Abyssal City. Yeah.
Okay, so once again, if you want to get at the podcast, add to the conversation, if you want to add your experiences playing Dota, if you want to try the Play Like a Girl setup and let us know what happened, fill out the survey, sign up, add more data to this cool thing.
Do it.
Just go ahead,
Add data
send
to it.
email thatpinguino@gmail.com, hit me up at thatpinguino on Twitter. And also, now I have stats for our podcast, like where people are downloading and what services they're using.
Ooh.
And worth mentioning, I know some of you are listening on iTunes, so I know you can review.
Okay.
I know you can.
He's putting you on blast, iTunes
So,
listeners.
I'm just saying, like, before I was
Get
unsure,
called out.
and now I know you can.
Have some.
So you should probably hit the little thing, go up to the 5-star. You want the 5-star. That's the one you want. Hit that one, and then review, because that will help us out. And so thank you once again for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thank you once again to Haya for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Pete and Billy, as always.
Always a
Always a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Till next time, peace.